Hey, my beautiful people. My name is Kristen. Thank you for stopping by my channel. Enter the book. Today, I am going to discuss the books I read in the month of February. And this doesn't include the ones I read for Black History because I already talked about them in a previous video, which I will link below. So if you have any interest in that topic, please check that out. And I also disclaiming, I technically have a little over 100 pages left in my Wheel of Time book, but I'm going to go ahead and review it because this is the middle of the series, so it's not like, I have to wait for the ending because it won't be the ending. I think I've read enough to say that I'm continuing to love the Wheel of Time. It's not as good as the third one. I've liked them increasingly, so I don't like this one as much as the third one, which was kind of a crescendo of a lot of reveals and kind of building along certain arcs. This is kind of an interlude, and you can tell they're building up. They're introducing new characters. There is a lot of kind of assassination attempts or political things that you can tell are going to build to something greater. And I was a little bit annoyed at kind of the slowdown of some of the main storylines. So you have this big crescendo, and now that particular, like the Dragon Reborn, one of the main characters has this big thing. And then in this book, he spends literally the near 1,000 pages like wrestling with kind of an identity slog, if you will. And so it's like, seriously, he's supposed to be one of the most powerful characters and he doesn't have his act together. But very interesting magic system. All the romantic relationships is also kind of annoying, but I really love the world. I love the characters. I love the magic system and the adventure and the sense of, wrestling with the good versus evil kind of thing that fantasy books generally have. So love it. Going to continue to give that a big thumbs up. I also would like to tell you about the book River Girl, Linda Jo Martin. This was sent to me by the author, and I will put her website in the description below. And I did want to take just a minute just to give my review on this because it is a short, sweet little book that is basically a story of back kind of before cell phones, before all of kind of modern, all of the happenings in life, back in settlement kind of things, and a story of a village that's wrestling with kind of being cut off a little bit from the mainland. There is literally a river that kind of separates the village from other happenings. There is a lot of prejudice, particularly against outsiders and against a doctor even who can help him, who has Chinese background. And so the girl's just longing to be a bridge over the river, both literally and figuratively, trying to make those connections. And it's just a really sweet story talking about kind of getting modern, getting civilized, getting connected to one another, both physically and spiritually. So I really enjoyed that sweet little book and encourage you to check that out if that sounds at all interesting to you. For my classics, I actually ended up reading 2 of my classics this month, which is great being a short month, right? So I buddy read with the lovely Berna at Burnish Bookish Adventures. I will leave her channel below. She also did a review. And The Princess Bride by William Goldman. This follows very closely to the movie if you are a fan of the movie, which I am. But it goes in, like any good book, goes into a lot more depth and behind the scenes. And I did not realize until I started reading this that William Goldman didn't write The Princess Bride. He adapted it and changed it and then wrote the screenplay. And he actually writes like he's talking to you, like, this is why I cut this scene, or this is what happened about this, or this is how this came about. So he's like almost sharing the process, if you will, of editing a book. And then you get to read what he thinks is all of the good bits and compare, some of that, particularly Billy Crystal, you know, when he's doing his Mad Max character, he ad-libs and changes the dialogue from the book to only, you know, only the way Billy Crystal can. So just totally loved it, totally had a great time. It was good, lighthearted reading, and I recommend it, especially if you are a fan of the movie, just to have it in a new way. I then read in the group with Becky, the Teacup the Storyteller, The Three Musketeers. And I wasn't going to read this till later in the year, but I mean, you got a great group of people reading it. I got to read it, right? So this story, which is a pretty significant classic, but it tells the story of Three Musketeers and their kind of sidekick D'Artagnan, who comes along as kind of a new protege and kind of gets into his own trouble. It is going alongside the conflict between England and France and the kind of tensions between the king and the church and those kind of political agendas of who's going to have the power and where the loyalty is going to be. But ultimately, this is exceedingly hysterical, just in the overtop way. You know, Dumas tells the story like almost a caricature, or definitely satirical in nature. Like, you know, oh, there is this, you know, force that we have to do what's right and, you know, fight to our death. But first I'm going to go over here and have a glass of wine, because who wants to waste this good vintage? You know, that kind of you know, just funsy kind of thing. And I was here for it. There were a few things that would be like, get on with the story. But I also, you know, find that a little bit in Alexandre Dumas' writing. But his writing is super fun, super well spoken, thoughtful. I love his characters. Even the ones that you're annoyed with are still just, they feel very fleshed out. And so I will continue to read his work and give Three Musketeers a, you know, huge thumbs up. Think that it is a great classic, even one to start with, I would say, as long as you're in the right frame to have that more fun, lighthearted. Next, for my nonfiction, I read The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli. So this book is not too long in length, but it really goes into a lot of explanation. It was told in kind of three parts about the nature of time. The first two, I have to admit, I really loved. It was just talking about the nature and science of time. It told it in a way that was fairly easy to follow, to understand, to think about, to wrap our brains around. It correlated with a lot of other writings that I had read. The third chapter was kind of more an application, or I think in some ways trying to talk towards the fluid, spiritual type of nature of time. And I appreciate that and I agree with that, but I think maybe I had slightly different conclusions than what this book was talking about. But it begs me to want to continue that journey and to keep on studying. So if you have a book about time, the nature of time, leave it in the comments below, because I want to continue, you know, going even deeper into this nature of time and time warp. One little snippet, if you have never studied time, that is really fascinating is just, it's very, very, very small, obviously, but time actually speeds up or slows down by the elevation or by the distance from masses. For instance, if you've ever seen the movie Interstellar, and they go and all the ships head off to different planets and they're at different locations, and then time actually passes differently for each of the astronauts depending on where they went. So that is the type of thing that's explored in this book and kind of unpacked and explained a bit for you. And it's kind of one of those things where momentarily I totally understand it, and then a moment later I'm like, what? For my fiction book that was chosen by my watchers, my viewers, I read Louise Penny's A Fatal Grace, and this is the second one in the series, and I loved it even more than the first. The first one was good, and I said, oh, this is good, I'm going to continue on with this series. This one was really good. So it is, you can see kind of the icy front. It is a this random mystery. This woman like basically dies suddenly watching a sporting event outside in front of everybody else, and then it becomes apparent that it has to be a murder and not just a random, heart attack or natural cause. And so, but everybody was there, everybody saw it, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a really fun little thing. And I did figure out some of it or suspect some of it, but there was some twists in there that still left you waiting for the answer. So that was great. For a I always kind of try to do now one of my sci-fi or fantasy books, and I picked up Brandon Sanderson's Shadows of Self. This is the second in the Wax and Wane series, and he has finished the series with the fourth book, which I pre-ordered and can't read because I hadn't even read the second or the third. So I decided I better read the second or the third. And this is a fun Brandon Sanderson kind of fantasy romp. You've got a magic system going on with the metals. You have a romance, you have a partnership, you have it all kind of set back in the pioneer Wild West kind of style with actual gunslingers and all those kind of things, but a magic system. So it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. I look forward to picking up the third one in that. Because it was February, I decided I should, for Valentine's, read a romance or two. So the first one had been one of my longest on my TBR pile that I picked up originally at a library sale. And that was a Jude Deauverax First Impressions, and never had a cover. But this is a story about kind of a retired police officer, private investigator who gets drawn back in to try to solve a case and whatnot. And when he's kind of working with the woman, there's kind of a romance, but then she's kind of falling for somebody else who's also wrapped up in the case. And it's one of those kind of things that really becomes really cliche. And I actually did not enjoy this, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Just kind of one of those, it's not the worst book, but definitely like a 2-star kind of book. Just fine, but nothing to recommend. Then I decided I wanted to read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is the same author that wrote Crazy Rich Asians, which I loved. I read that book. It was just the perfect kind of funsy romance. Then I went to go see the movie at a movie theater that, you could order, a meal and cocktails and everything that were themed about the book. So that was really fun. So I said, I'm going to pick up this book because it's by the same author. And it was a lot more racy than I thought. It's like a woman who is struggling on the autism scale, and so she's awkward, and so she basically hires a male escort to teach her first to have sex, and then she decides she needs help to know how to be in a relationship at all. And of course, over the course of this, it's probably no spoiler that they're going to fall for each other. That's the whole premise of this book. But I was just like, whoo, all right. The thought of hiring someone to teach you how to have sex in a relationship is a pretty interesting premise. So I totally appreciate why this book was so popular, but I had bought it secondhand and forgotten completely what it was even going to be about. But it was a good Valentine's read, y'all. Just a fun, silly little romance. So those were, besides the Black History books, which were also really good, those were the books I read, which was a lot. It was a lot of pages, and I had to finish reading the Three Musketeers as a chunker just to get ready for March of the Mammoths and get all my March reading done. And I'm going to this weekend finish my Wheel of Time book so that I can get on to my March reading. But if you've read any of these and want to give me some comments back, or if you're interested in reading any of these, let me know. I appreciate that. I hope that whatever you're reading, you're having just an excellent connection, making you laugh, making you cry, making you think, making you respond all the ways that reading can in that magical world as we enter the book. Thank you so much for stopping by. Y'all have a blessed day.